Alright, I've had a lot of people ask about Avengers. Is it a good game? Is it worth your money? Why are you playing
You ever
it?
hear one that's
There's
double
a number of
backwards
reasons
and
for
triple
why I'm playing
sideways?
it. The first is that
Improving? Too busy
while I'm
making
going to be
jokes?
busy throughout
Right.
pretty much November, there's just nothing to play right now. I also lost the ability to play KOF All-Star without crashing, so I was looking for something else to play. I definitely have had fun with this game, but I have to admit, you need the patience of a saint to play it. Now, it's kind of, there's never really a good time to do this. I know a lot of the big content creators have already made clickbait videos about this stuff, and they have patched this game, I think, like 3 or 4 times since release, so it's not like they're just
Heading out on the next
dawdling
adventure.
around and not
Looks
listening
like
to the
you're
community and
interested.
stuff. But the game launched horrendously
Status?
broken. I actually had a pretty decent experience, all things considered. I had a lot of performance issues, but the first major patch they did for PC fixed that. But when I finished the campaign, the whole campaign was just a complete mess. The last level was a complete mess. It seemed like I was getting some kind of memory leak. Like the camera stopped working, so I couldn't finish a puzzle. uh, like the characters stopped loading completely, and then the attack button stopped working. Uh, it seems like the campaign for most people is what is the best part of this game. It's when you start getting to the end game or post game, whatever you want to call it, which is in this game the Avengers Initiative, which is basically just grinding. I'm no stranger to grinding. I don't mind doing things in the same environment over and over. This video is made by somebody who's got thousands of hours in Muso games, in which you generally do the same map over and over and over in different ways. This game is very much like that. I think people are putting a little bit too much weight into the repetitiveness of the environments when there's problems with the combat and just the core gameplay loop that I feel need to get fixed first before they bother making a bunch of assets and then still have the core gameplay mechanics not work properly.
Whatever you may need, I can
Now,
provide.
this merchant here, he actually does have some pretty nice things. The problem is that they're all random, and once you get to level 130, power level 130, there are two levels in this game, the character level and the power level. Power level is kind of like, I think they call it gear score in other more popular games. Uh, the problem is that gear score does not really do much of anything. This game has very strict enemy scaling. I remember back when Final Fantasy VIII came out. I'm not really much of a Final Fantasy fan, so I don't know much about these things myself. But I remember people in my local circle complaining about the fact that you never really felt strong. That's definitely a problem here. No matter how much you grind, there's a number of factors that make it so that you don't really feel as strong as you should, especially with how much time you can put into this game. You could easily put 200 hours. I've seen people say that they've done the end game activities numerous times and they've gotten nothing, or everything is just like a side grade or a straight downgrade. There are so many layers of RNG to the items in this game. So you see here, this is a level 54 armor for Captain America. It has 3 affixes and 2 stats. Now, there's multiple layers of RNG here. There's the how many stats it has, the I guess the stat spread of the stats, the star level, which determines the stat spread, and then the perks or the affixes. And then it needs to be something that you actually need. If it's something that goes against your build, there's jack that you can do about it. You have to go pray that you can find another one. It is the main problem why I feel like all the videos about builds in this are kind of, I wouldn't call them misleading, but they're kind of giving a false representation of what's actually possible in this game. The only time you really feel powerful in this game is when you make a build that really goes well together. You have a lot of things that complement each other, like, say, on my Black Widow, I have on her gloves, I have the ability to proc a heroic charge burst, which is basically this game's equivalent of meter gain whenever she does a melee crit. So when I attack from the back, and also when I'm in overcharge or invisibility, I pretty much have like 80% crit. So almost all the time, I'm going to be proccing that meter gain, and I can stay in invisibility and use Widow's Bite and the ultimate pretty much as I want. But it took basically just one nice drop of instance of RNG to get that. Basically, I went to this very vendor here, and he had a faultless spark gloves, and that was really what solidified my build. But the problem is that you can't re-roll anything. You can't like re-roll a perk. You also can't upgrade earlier like items you found earlier than like while you're in the leveling phase. You know, leveling your power and gear level. Like say this junk item here that had something really good on it, had a really good affix. You cannot level it up to 130, 140, or 150. It's stuck like that permanently. That's definitely one thing I would like them to fix, but I think ideally they should just make it so that you can re-roll things. There is a lot of RNG in this game, despite how simple it seems. You know, I see a lot of people complaining about how, you know, you go through the same buildings over and over. I feel like that's just something you have to accept in any hunting-based game. You know, in Monster Hunter and God Eater and Tokiden and all the other ones, you know, you're going to the same map over and over. You know, the main differences are the monster you're fighting, or maybe there'll be different objectives or gimmicks. It's very much the same thing here. It's just when you're in the
Nothing then.
when you're in the buildings,
All
it's basically
handmade,
just the
all
same 4 or 5
fantastic,
objectives
all
endlessly.
proceeds keep me an espresso for a little longer.
Now, in terms of this, this is like the microtransaction stuff. This is the things that they want you to spend real money on. But if you haven't played this game, these 3 legendary costumes have been here for literally since launch. So I don't understand. You know, if they want people to spend money on this stuff, they need to actually have good costumes for one, and alternatively, or additionally, they also need to have ones that people actually want.
All right, fine.
Like,
but
if
you're
you look
going
at
to come back.
Captain America's cosmetics here, this is the one I got from beating the story. This one looks pretty cool. You know, it's not like his iconic look, but it's a nice little, you know, unique rendition on it. But then you look at the stuff that's in the marketplace, and there's 4 of these. And the only difference is the pants he's wearing. Now, we all spend money on frivolous things in life, especially now that a lot of things are available digitally, and there's no more physical aspect of actually getting up and going to the store, be it walking or driving or calling an Uber or getting a ride or whatever. But I don't really think many people are actually spending money on these things. Like, why do you need 4 costumes of Captain America shirtless, and the only difference is the pants he's wearing? You know, the selection of costumes that they have are not that great. And the prices on them are crazy too. I think it's like $14 for a rare skin. I don't really see too many people actually buying the costumes because this NPC here is supposed to allow you to get them with in-game credits. The credits are basically like your in-game currency. You know, if you've ever played, I think Tales of the Rays would be the most accurate representation, even though that's not a game very many of you have played. In that game, you have a free currency and a paid currency. In this game, the free currency can be used for all this stuff, and the paid currency can only be used for the battle passes.
I stayed up all night and you didn't.
And there's some problems with the battle passes as well.
Life.
You see things in here? Actually, I just got a bunch of them already. Things like this upgrade module bundle. You think this would actually give you a lot of them. It actually gives you only like 12 of them, and you need hundreds of these to upgrade even one item. If they're expecting people to spend a lot of money on these, I think like they need to seriously reconsider how they're doing things, because it's not a good value for your money. I actually got curious. I took one for the team. I spent like $4 to try to get one of these and see if it was actually worth spending money on. It only gave me about a dozen of them, and when you consider that if I went on my Black Widow right now, you'd see I need 24 of these modules to rank up her gear. One piece of one of her gear once. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like they want this game to be a service game, but they don't have the compelling content, loot, or monetization to really warrant people coming back, and that's kind of what the issue is at the moment. Even a lot of the skins that you get in here are just recolors, so you kind of wonder why you would bother getting them. Now, this one, to be fair, actually looks quite nice. This one is relatively similar to his standard costume he had in the 80s and 90s, but you have to get really, really deep in here, and a lot of these other things that you can get are not worth it. Another problem is there's a lot of downtime in this game. Like, for instance, if I want to go to Sidney Levine here, the faction vendor, this is actually the shortcut, but you have to walk all the way back. So every time you want to talk to this guy, you have to walk all the way there and all the way back, and I don't understand why it's designed that way. This game is kind of unique in that you don't interact with other players until you're actually inside, actual gameplay. Like when you're actually in a map, it is not like, Monster Hunter or Tokiden or God Eater, where everybody's in the same lobby and they can complete their tasks and do their preparations, and then you go into gameplay. Here, all this stuff is completely single player, so it kind of begs the question of why don't they allow you to just have all these guys at the start, or just allow you to access them from a menu. You walk really slow. You basically have like a healthy jog during this, and it can take a really long time, especially since you need to go to two. There are two different hideouts in this game. There's this one and the anthill. So you can watch how long it's going to take me to get all the way back to the war table, where I can actually get into a playable scenario. It's so bad, people have been using glitches with taunts to get to, just to get back to the war table faster. I think this is actually one of the coolest looking hub, like, base worlds in any hunting type game I've played, but it's way too big for what it offers, and they could definitely just consolidate things to the war table itself, that you can get straight into gameplay a lot faster. This game has a lot of loading times. Even just doing a hive, I'd estimate if you do like the Elite Heroic Hive, which takes people about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on their build, and how optimized they are, and how good they are at the game. I'd estimate probably about maybe 5 to 10 minutes of it is probably just waiting for the elevators to open. There's lots of other things that hurt the pacing as well, like having to watch the cutscenes for objectives you've done like 500 times at this point. So let's get into some gameplay here, and I can show you some of the issues. Now, like I said, a lot of these things I'm pointing out may be subject to change. They have mentioned, or they have fixed a lot of things in the past few patches. They did nerf the ranged enemies a little bit, but pretty much everybody collectively agrees that it is not enough. More needs to be done to make the game fair. This game has a lot of artificial difficulty. You don't always feel like when you die that it's your fault, and I definitely consider that to be a problem in a skill-based game. There needs to be, you need to feel like, at least most of the time when you die, that it's your fault. There's still a lot of off-screen projectiles in this game. I've always had a sinking suspicion that this game is, one of the combat designers is like somebody who also works at Team Ninja. You know how Team Ninja games always have obnoxious modifiers and stuff?
We've identified an AIM facility that is vulnerable to attack. Though there are still security synthoids to contend with, we expect the Avengers should be able to easily prevail. Take out any AIM forces you encounter.
One of the biggest problems in this game is the uneven hit stun. The player can be locked in hit stun until they're dead, whereas a lot of the enemies, even the really obnoxious ones that you think would have like ridiculous hit stun
for the location
or no
on your
armor at all,
HUD.
will have hyper armor. So a lot of times you don't really feel like a superhero in this game. You kind of feel like a cosplayer. I've seen a lot of other people use that term to kind of explain how it feels to play this game. Sometimes you feel like a cosplayer. You don't really feel like you're actually these people you're supposed to be.
Bring the pain, people!
One of the problems with Captain America is that, Captain America, for the purpose of a video game, is not a very interesting character. The only thing that he really has going for him is that he has, like, peak human ability powers, and the fact that he has a shield that's almost unbreakable. But in this game, the enemies spam unblockables a lot, so a lot of times you'll feel like you can't even really use his main gimmick as a superhero. They did say that they're going to look into unblockables, but as it stands now, a lot of times you'll get hit by an unblockable, and then you'll get locked in hit stun, or you'll perfect dodge something, and you get the little bit of extra iframes for perfect dodging, but it's not enough, and you still get hit while you're recovering from the animation.
These enemies
Things like
must be
that
defeated.
make this game feel really unfair, and it's unfortunate because I feel like it has quite a good foundation.
Enemy down.
Captain America in particular is actually very fun to play, but the fact that he's a sitting duck when he's in front of unblockable attacks, even though he's supposed to be somebody that can block almost anything on the planet, it feels really off. A lot of people have been complaining about that, but they did give Cap some decent fixes.
Not your smart.
Oh, what happened there?
We've got the advantage.
He's still got a ways to go. See, I just did an enemy step there off his shield. I think this game has a really awesome foundation. It's just the balancing is off. You don't always feel like you're in control. There's definitely a lot of artificial difficulty as well. Mostly stems from ranged enemies, in particular unblockable attacks. Not really having enough invincibility frames on perfect dodges so that you feel like you're actively rewarded for doing so. And the gear is just not terribly interesting. The gear being boring is kind of what kills this endgame.
Nice
exotic
work,
items. Unfortunately, I don't have one that I can use right now to show you guys, but
significantly
there's
weaken their capabilities.
plenty of examples on YouTube and Reddit and stuff of people getting exotics that are worse than legendaries and even epics, which is like 2 tiers below exotics. I think loot balancing and then making this actually feel like a real service game is what they really need to fix, but if you just want a character action game with loot, I think this game is relatively satisfying to play. When you get into the zone and the enemies actually let you cooperate and you're not getting spammed by projectiles from 10 miles away, the game is quite fun. But you don't always feel like you're in control. You definitely do feel like a cosplayer a lot in this game, which is not what you expect in a superhero game. And the problem is that, you know, generally with loot-based games, you generally do feel kind of like a cosplayer until you get like a really unique set or something. But there's no set bonuses in this game. There's no real unique perks or affixes. There are a couple that are nice, but they're locked to exotics, and exotics have a really bad drop rate right now. One of the biggest complaints with this game is the loot. I think the loot is not very interesting. I feel like they got the wrong people to do a loot-based game or a service game. Crystal Dynamics, you know, they do a lot of the Tomb Raider games and stuff. From what I hear, those are very great single-player games. The campaign, for what it's worth, I did really enjoy for the most part. My experience was definitely dampened by the fact that the last level was a buggy mess, and I had to soft reset the game. Actually, I had to hard reset the game like 3 times just to clear it, and it actually even crashed my PC because of, I guess, just the game was not getting out of the RAM or something. The game is a mess. I feel like if you can get it for cheap, I think it's worth it. The campaign will run you about 6 hours. I feel like a lot of the estimates for the campaign are kind of, they're not really lying, but they're kind of misrepresenting how much content there is in this, because once you beat the campaign, A, you can't do the campaign again, and B, you're basically doing the same missions you'd be doing in Avengers Initiative. So getting to 100% in the campaign really doesn't mean anything. There are no exclusive missions in the campaign past the actual campaign itself. Campaign past that point basically just becomes an offline version of Avengers Initiative, because they don't want to make something that's completely unplayable when you don't have internet access. So the campaign was maybe like 4 to 6 hours to me. The only cutscenes I skipped were the ones at the beginning, because I saw those back in the beta. Everything else I watched, I actually thought the story was quite good for what it was. It definitely made the characters feel human and stuff, but it's once you get past the campaign is when you start to see a lot of the flaws of this game. You know, the loot doesn't really matter in the campaign because you play as everybody for very short, intermittent periods of time. But past that point, you kind of wonder, like, when is there going to be a really cool, like, 1% drop that's going to completely change the way my character's played and make him or her broken? There's nothing like that of the sort here. They did mention that there's supposed to be a new raid coming very soon, apparently, and that will have unique perks and stuff, so that might actually fix that issue. In terms of the PC port itself, they definitely have made a couple nice changes over the past couple patches. The optimization is much better. After I did a little bit of tweaking on my end, outside of some rare isolated situations, I pretty much have 60 FPS at 1080p on high settings almost all the time. I do not have the high resolution texture pack installed because this game is it's still a resource hog. It doesn't seem to tax my CPU as much as it did, but the GPU also gets a little bit taxed as well. I have a feeling the game is bleeding players. I'm looking at my second monitor right now. I'm on Steam database, and there's 2,344 people playing this on PC right now, which for a game that's supposed to be a AAA massive blockbuster service game, that's a really bad sign. I have a feeling that they'll steeply discount this game within the near future, probably by Black Friday or something. I would say it would be worth it at that point. At that point, we will have the first major content drop. I'm sure the raids will be out. Also, the first character, Kate Bishop, is supposed to be out, and she's supposed to come with, I guess, a little bit of a mini campaign and some other content as well. I think they will improve this game in due time. It's just right now that everybody who was an early adopter like me don't really feel like we got our money's worth. I can't really say I didn't. I got a $30 donation for this, so I ended up paying like 25 bucks for it, and I've got about 70 hours in the game, so I find it a little odd that people are saying that they played the game for 200 hours and they feel like they didn't get their money's worth. It's like, even if you don't like the direction and the condition the game is in right now, obviously you still got your money's worth. It's just, it's not what you expected. I mean, I've played a lot of service games in my time, and a lot of them are pretty bad when they start. It's just this one, you know, they already delayed it like twice, and it came out in the state it's in. I don't really think it's the fault of the developers. The developers have been very receptive of feedback. A lot of things have been fixed already. It's really only been about a month since release, so you have to consider how many things they fixed in that short period of time when you consider how broken the game was at the start. And, you know, the pandemic and everything is making the workload, the workflow go a lot slower than it used to. I think they've done a pretty exemplary job. It's just that in the game industry, publisher greed is a thing. You know, publishers want their games out yesterday, and the developers are not done yet. They need more time to make the game and, you know, make sure it's cooked properly and everything. And that's just something that a lot of developers don't get as much as they like of lately. So you kind of have to take that into consideration. I think they will fix this game in due time. If you have the game on PC and you like to play with me, my Steam name is the same as it is on here on YouTube. So just type in Tetsuo49, and maybe we can get some games going. Anyway, I hope that helps you guys. I've gotten endless questions about this. I'm sorry it took me so long to get it out, but I hope this helps, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.